save some members of their family and bring them to Toronto too. They use this as they come back through here to get family members free and take them to Toronto with them. Yes.
Question. So in 2015 and beyond, the new bounty hunters would be, if it's safe to say, our lawyers and our judges, and the new plantations are the prisons and the jailhouses.
In many cases, that's exactly what's happening.
So modern day slavery.
Yeah, exactly what's happening. That's right. So now, of course, this don't go down just like that. The mayor, Chapin, mayor of Detroit, the governor of Detroit, governor of Michigan, they petitioned the Canadian government to send them back. Now we know that people were escaping from slavery and going to Canada, so Canada wasn't sending people back from, once you made it to Canada, you was free. So but there's an extradition treaty between the United States and Canada, not for slavery, but for crimes. And so they charged them with inciting a riot. They charged Thornton and Ruthie Blackburn with inciting a riot. So the Canadian government is supposed to send them back. It goes through the Canadian courts for over a year. And the Canadian courts decide that they will never extradite, never send back a suspect of a crime in the United States or any other country if they are facing a punishment higher than what they would face in Canada. That becomes a legal precedent in the country of Canada that's still practiced to this day. And it started because of this case that happened in Detroit in 1833. Today, it's used mainly for the death penalty. So if a person escapes from New York or from Maine or from somewhere in the United States and makes it to Canada, and the United States said you got to send them back, but they facing the death penalty, Canada will not send them back because Canada don't have no death penalty. So that's what it's used for now. So what most countries do is they take the death penalty off the table.
They know they're in Canada.
Yeah, and then they say, okay, Canada, can you send them back? And Canada sends them back. And they get life in prison, whatever. But Canada won't send them back if they're facing the death penalty in whatever country.
Then they get them back and then they say, yep, death penalty.
Well, that hasn't happened, but a lot of people say that they should. That's what states should do. Right. Yeah, then Canada stopped sending anybody back if they thought that. So, but this started because of this case in Detroit. That's the whole power of this. So that's what happened with them, okay? The Blackburns. Well, I'm not done with the Blackburns. So the Blackburns, like I told you, they died wealthy landowners in Canada, right? Wealthy landowners, rich folks in Canada. When their home was excavated in the 1980s, they found that they lived simply. They lived like they weren't rich at all. They lived like almost like some of the poor people in Canada. And they're like, how as rich as these people were, how did they live like that? Well, as further excavation happened, they discovered that the Blackburns owned 6 other homes in Toronto, which they used for other black people who escaped from slavery and made it to Toronto so they would have a refuge spot to live. So instead of using their money to live lavishly, which they could have, but they were rich, they put their money back into helping other black people who escape from slavery. And make sure they have something to eat, somewhere to live, clothing, and that's where their money went.
In the factory.
That's right. They're awesome. That story is awesome. We're standing where it happened. You see anything here telling us this. In Canada, they have big markers telling their whole story. From Toronto, from Kentucky to Detroit, all the stuff that happened right here in Detroit, and what happened in Toronto, and them coming back and rescuing their family, and the other 6 homes there. All that is in a whole story on the billboards where their home was in Toronto. In Kentucky, where they escaped from. It's a smaller historical marker, but it's a historical marker, kind of like the one we just saw in Capitol Park, telling their story, including what happened here in Detroit.
Wow, so we need
in
to
Detroit,
go across
where
the
it
river.
happened. Exactly where we stand, right where it happened. There's nothing here to tell you.
It's a story, it's history in the history books in Canada.
Right.
So we need to go to continue the story over in Canada across the river.
But Detroit, right here in Detroit, is
where it happened. There's nothing here to tell you. Okay, so the book I'm writing is Black Before Bankruptcy, the most important sites in the history of Black Detroit, in the building of Black Detroit. Most important sites in the building of Black Detroit. And of course, as I argue, this is the most important site because this is how Detroit became a black community. So I haven't really told you what happened in Detroit. I told you what happened with the Blackburns. What happened in Detroit? It didn't just go down like that, where black people revolted, killed the sheriff, and that was the end of the story. You already know. So what happens is the 30 black people who were identified as the leaders of this slave revolt that happened right here were imprisoned. They put them in jail. Some people escaped and went to Canada till all this was over. 300 black people were forced to clean the city of the destruction that happened during the slave revolt. The city council, being urged by the Michigan Intelligentsia and Democratic Free Press, the new newspaper that had just started, that was founded by the money of Joseph Campbell, John R. Williams, and Adelaide DeQuinder. This racist newspaper said that you got to do something to punish these black people. You can't let them get away with this. And the city alderman started the first curfew in Michigan. 9 o'clock p.m., black folks had to be inside.
What year was this?
1833. And they started what you now know as the Detroit Police Department. The city councilman, alderman at that time, said we have to pay a patrol, a police patrol, because the sheriff and the deputy ain't enough. We need a police patrol that will police the docks where they try to escape from and be ready in case another rebellion like this starts. They can put it down. And they can stop black people escaping from slavery from being able to be held in people's homes while they're escaping from slavery. So the origin of the Detroit Police Department is patrol to stop black people who were escaping from slavery in 1833.
And that was their sole purpose?
That was their original purpose. It was not to protect the innocent and serve the public. No, not in 1833. So the same history can be found for Baltimore Police Department. They were slave catchers. That's why they started. They started out as slave catchers. And then they evolved after the Civil War to be what we call police departments now. Same thing in Detroit. They started out as slave catchers, slave patrol. And then after the Civil War ended, they evolved to be what we now call police departments.
What's the difference between a bounty hunter and a slave catcher? Or is it just the same but different?
Okay, so terms? A bounty hunter
can
be a slave catcher, but they can also be catching another kind of criminal. A bounty hunter could be catching somebody who robbed a bank, or could be catching somebody who murdered somebody. A slave catcher ain't trying to catch none of them other people. He's not trying to catch no bank robbers. He's not trying to catch none of those. He gets a bounty, but only if he brings back a black person who escaped from slavery. He gets nothing for catching bank robbers. Bounty hunters can be slave catchers, but they can also go after other criminals, so-called criminals. Slave catchers only go after one group of people. That's it.